We'll call the meeting to order. This is the fifth meeting of the Standing Committee on Finance, and pursuant to Standing Order 1082, we'll be doing continuing pre-budget consultations for budget 2016. Before we start with witnesses, we have a little bit of housekeeping to take care of, or we won't be able to follow through on our commitment to have assisted witnesses in getting here that are from afar. So you have a budget before you. It's on that long sheet of paper, and it's a budget for $55,150. It was budgeted for basically 44 witnesses coming in. You do know that we have 92, but it's based on those that will be asking for travel or the video conference costs. There's a lot of national organizations on short notice that are in Ottawa and were able to come at maybe a taxi jet expense, if that. So is there any questions on that budget? If not, could I have a motion that the proposed budget in the amount of $55,150 for the study on the pre-budget consultations 2016 be adopted, and that the chair present the said budget to the liaison committee? Moved by Stephen, seconded by Mr. Leipert. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried. Anyone opposed? Great. Okay, thank you very much. Turning to witnesses, thank you all for coming. I know it was fairly short notice, especially for some who got a call at late last evening. So we'll start with the Canadian Pharmacists Association, and I'll call you Perry, and I'll get you to pronounce your last name.
Perry Eisenschmidt.
Eisenschmidt, okay. I'm from Prince Edward Island. Go ahead, Perry, and thank you for coming. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, committee members, thank you very much for the opportunity to appear before you today to present some of our priorities for the 2016 federal budget. We strongly believe that a healthy population is key to ensuring a vibrant and productive economy, both now and into the future. The Canadian Pharmacists Association is the national voice for pharmacy in Canada, and we're focused on advancing the health and well-being of Canadians through excellence in pharmacist care. There are 39,000 hardworking pharmacists who work in community and hospital pharmacies across the country, and they are often the first point of contact for patients and their families within the healthcare system. Over the past 10 years, we've seen pharmacists' scope of practice expand significantly beyond simple drug dispensing, and Canadian pharmacists are now world leaders in advanced pharmacy practice. Today, we would like to offer 3 recommendations for the committee's consideration. These recommendations are essential not only to the future sustainability of our healthcare system, but also critical to ensuring that pharmacists across the country can provide the best possible care to their patients. So the first area is on improved drug access. We recommend that the federal government work with the provinces and territories, healthcare professionals, and other stakeholders to ensure that Canadians have access to the medication and pharmacy services they need to be healthy. As frontline healthcare professionals, pharmacists see the devastating impact on their patients when they are not able to afford the drugs and services that they need. We acknowledge that there are pros and cons to every potential pharmacare model, and so far, a universal single-payer model has dominated the discussion. Yet, according to a study we released this past January, such a model would cost taxpayers an additional $6.6 billion per year. Furthermore, it could dramatically decrease the number of medications currently covered and increase wait times for new medications to receive coverage. The Canadian Pharmacists Association believes that our first priority should be addressing the existing gaps in coverage between public and private systems to protect Canadians from undue financial hardship. In the next few weeks, we will be releasing a major report looking at 4 potential pan-Canadian pharmacare models. This report will provide not only the costs and potential cost savings of each model, but also the qualitative benefits and trade-offs of each. However, the cost of drugs is only one part of the puzzle. Prescription drugs represent only 13% of total health spending in Canada, and the growth in drug spending has slowed in recent years. A singular focus on cost containment instead of improving care and health outcomes or value for health dollars risks missed opportunities for cost savings in other areas of the health system through effective prescribing and medication adherence, to name a few. Pharmacare has to be more than just about the cost of drugs. After all, we're talking about pharmacare, not pharma cost. To ensure appropriate pharmacare, access to essential pharmacy services must also be part of the solution. Ensuring appropriate prescribing and medication adherence are key to overall patient health and to the long-term sustainability of any pan-Canadian pharmacare model. The second issue of importance is e-prescribing. So our second recommendation is essential to ensuring that the right drug gets to the right patient at the right time. Therefore, we recommend that the federal government invest in the development of a seamless pan-Canadian e-prescribing system. Much like it sounds, e-prescribing is the secure electronic sharing of prescription information between health providers. It is a means of communicating important prescription information between pharmacists, physicians, nurses, and other relevant providers. When properly implemented, e-prescribing reduces the possibility of errors, it reduces back and forth communication between healthcare providers, and it allows for the integration of safety and alert systems when prescriptions are issued. Such a system will save lives and reduce healthcare costs. This is why we urge the federal government to work with key stakeholders, including the provinces and territories, to develop a common national standard for e-prescribing and then develop a plan to implement that standard. Finally, the last area is improving immunization rates. We recommend that the government move forward with its election commitment to invest an additional $15 million per year towards improving immunization rates in Canada. We are very concerned that according to recently released national data, child immunization rates in Canada are falling short of herd immunity, and we are pleased to see the government's commitment to improving immunization rates for children. We believe that pharmacists have an important role to play in providing immunizations to Canadians. To give you just one example, between 2010 and 2012, when pharmacists were given the authority to provide flu vaccinations in Alberta, vaccination rates in the province increased almost 20%. The existing national vaccination strategy must be revamped to increase public awareness of the importance of vaccinations and include a comprehensive approach that would further expand pharmacists' scope of practice to administer vaccines. Thank you again for this invitation to appear, and I will be happy to take questions later from the committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Eisensmed. We'll turn to the National Centre for Electrochemistry and Environmental Technologies, if I got that close to right, Ms. Dessel.
Chers membres du comité, merci.
Members of the committee, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to appear before you today. The National Centre for Electrochemistry and Environmental Technologies is one of the technology transfer centres as part of the TransTech and the Access networks that belong to the NSERC. We obviously serve the Quebec region, but we serve a wider region than that as well. Our centre is recognised for the work that is done in a number of areas, including bioprocessing, nanotechnology, green chemistry, renewable energy, purification technologies, and electrochemistry. Our centre comprises a team of 51 experts, and that includes researchers and technicians. Over the past 5 years, the centre saw its turnover go up by 460%. We've undertaken 450 projects with 250 businesses and partners in Quebec, the United States, France, Brazil, the Netherlands, and Mexico. Our centre has been involved in using technology transfers in 85% of these projects. Our centre has received prizes for the research that we've carried out and in various areas. We work in collaboration with a number of stakeholders involved in innovation, as well as universities, colleges and governments all across Canada. We would like to make 3 recommendations today. Firstly, we think it's important to encourage the whole research and innovation change. This fundamental research helps us with applied research, and the cycle takes about 3 to 6 years, depending on how mature the technology is. Applied research is very important. It allows us to reduce the time that we can get our innovation out into the marketplace, and it helps us encourage our SMEs to be more competitive. The basic or fundamental research receives about $1 billion a year from the NSERC, and it's very important that this budget be maintained. As for applied research in the colleges, it currently gets $50 million a year, and given how important the results that we're seeing for this are in terms of how they can help SMEs, it would be important to increase this budget so as we can withstand international competition. Secondly, it's very important to invest in organisations that support applied research in Canada. Our centre has done a lot of work on this, and we've seen a great improvement over the past 5 years. There are a number of organisations which have been involved, including NSERC, the Canadian Foundation for Innovation, and Economic Development Canada. It is very important to maintain the budgets in regional offices, and this will help us to be competitive. Our centre wouldn't be able to help Canadian businesses the way it can without having the support programs offered by these other organisations as well. And this is very important to maintain Canada's position in the knowledge economy. Thirdly, it's important to allow colleges access to the Canadian government's research support fund. 25 years ago, the research centres in colleges were carrying out small projects that required only modest technologies. But now the research has evolved, and there's applied research that is being carried out. And there are now 49 of these CCTT centres in Quebec, and there's some 30-odd CAT centres in Canada. These are high technology centres, and they're leaders in the field, and we need to make sure there is infrastructure and funding that goes with it. Universities have access to the Canadian government's research support fund, but the colleges don't currently have access to it, and that would be important. It is very important to allow the colleges to have access to this fund, and that is something that will help the whole of the Canadian economy. Our centre is extremely grateful for the support that we've received from the Canadian government. We take our role as a leader in environmental technology very seriously, and we continue to work extremely hard to encourage development and getting these new innovations out into the marketplace as quickly as possible, because this is the way that we can serve our SMEs in Canada. We have a program where we try to get more products out. We try to launch new products and help businesses, and we try to unite people, bring them together, and we also try to simplify the processes. All of this to help SMEs, help the SMEs. We want to try and get things out into the marketplace as quickly as possible, and we want to complete the transfer technology chain as quickly as possible to help the Canadian businesses and the economy. Thank you very much for your attention.
Zell, turning then to the Colleges and Institutes Canada, Ms. Amiot, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm presenting this morning on behalf of Canada's extensive network of colleges, cégep, polytechnics, and institutes that serves over 3,000 urban, rural, and remote communities from coast to coast to coast. Dans le contexte économique actuel,
I understand that in the current economic environment, the government has to establish priorities for its investments so as it can best serve the needs of Canadians.
My remarks on three specific ways that colleges and institutes can contribute to Canada's economic and social success in the short term. Our recommendations for Budget 2016 are all in line with the government priorities. They are as follows. First, make targeted strategic investments in infrastructure at colleges and institutes to ensure Canada has the training and innovation infrastructure to support economic growth and social development. Second, increase funding for college applied research as the other witness spoke about, to strengthen the innovation capacity of small companies and communities. And third, provide funding to support more co-op and internship opportunities and expanded pre-apprenticeship training to improve the employability of young Canadians. I also want to mention to this committee that we have submitted a written brief to the committee. You will note that a key priority for colleges and institutes is increasing access to post-secondary education and skills, upgrading for Indigenous peoples as essential to support reconciliation. In regards to infrastructure funding, our members recommend that the government establish a dedicated envelope for post-secondary institutions to address deferred maintenance and infrastructure needs to meet the increased employer demand for college institute programs and make a difference in their community. A recent CICAN study found that 60% of existing infrastructure currently exceeds its 40-year life cycle and requires replacement or significant maintenance. Aging infrastructure limits enrollment capacity at colleges and institutes, resulting in wait lists for programs in high-demand fields such as trades, healthcare, and engineering technologies. Bien que le programme d'infrastructure du savoir de 2000
Although the 2009 Knowledge Infrastructure Programme made a difference, our needs continue to grow. At the moment, colleges and institutes are ready to launch some 800 maintenance projects, which would be worth or cost $1.6 billion. 75% of these projects would allow the institutions to become more energy efficient and to reduce their environmental footprint. 200 new construction projects worth some $6 billion are also ready to go and are just waiting for financing to become available.
Fully develop its innovation agenda, we want to highlight two specific investments in college and institute applied research that will immediately strengthen the innovations capacity of small businesses and communities across the country. The Tri-Agency College and Community Innovations Program and the SSHRC Community and College Social Innovation Fund, PALLET, are two key programs that support college and institute applied research. These granting agency programs are not meeting the growing demand from industry and community partners for applied research services, nor are they leveraging the substantial untapped capacity among faculty and students. We recommend the government increase the annual budget of the CCI program by $17 million per year so that colleges and institutes are not required to turn away so many requests from small and medium enterprise for innovation support. We also recommend that the SSHRC Social Innovation Pilot of $5 million be made permanent with an increased budget of $10 million per year. The early results from this program are very exciting, but the pilot funding will be tapped out when the second competition is completed this spring. It has responded to a huge pent-up demand from community partners who see great opportunities for social innovation related to education, crime prevention, environment, and responding to the needs of newcomers to Canada. Finally, in difficult...
if you can sum up in about 30 seconds,
Yes,
it'd be great.
finally, I'm almost done. Finally, in difficult economic times, we must all do more to improve employment opportunities and outcomes for young Canadians. Nous recommandons donc que le gouvernement développe de
We recommend, therefore, that the government develops new programs to encourage encourage employers to offer more internships and co-op programs.
training programs, colleges and institutes are ready to ramp up their offerings, in particular for high-demand Red Seal trades. Nous espérons que nos recommandations seront utiles pour le travail du comité.
We hope that the committee will find these recommendations useful, and we are certainly prepared to work with the Canadian Government to try and encourage development, skills development, and to meet the needs of our businesses in terms of the labour force in those growth areas. We want to try and support innovation for SMEs and also for communities, and to help improve employment prospects for young people. Thank you very much.
Ms. Yamat. Mr. Marshall with the Mining Association of Canada, the floor is yours. 5 minutes, please.
Mr. Chair, chers membres de la comité, clerk, and fellow witnesses, my name is Brendan Marshall. I'm the Senior Director of Economic and Northern Affairs of the Mining Association of Canada. MAC is the national voice of Canada's mining and mineral processing industry, representing 38 members engaged in exploration, mining, smelting, and semi-fabrication across a host of commodities. Our President and CEO, Pierre Gratton, was unable to be here today as he's currently in Botswana delivering a workshop on our Towards Sustainable Mining initiative. He sends his regrets. The global mining sector is struggling through a significant downturn in commodity prices, triggered by economic volatility and the consequences of an oversupplied market during the lengthy upswing of the past decade. While adept at controlling costs and steering through uncertainty, the downward pressure on mineral prices is real and companies are feeling it. Many commodity prices have declined. From winter 2011 highs, both nickel and copper have fallen, losing nearly 70% and 50% of their value, respectively. Similar trends with subtle variations are seen in silver, uranium, and potash, with the most dramatic swings in iron ore and coal. While downward pressure is pervasive across many commodities, some sectors of the industry are seeing improvements. For example, the price of gold has jumped nearly 15% from roughly $10.50 an ounce in early December to $12.10 an ounce in mid-February. Important context is the impact of the low Canadian dollar, trading at 73 cents US, providing relief where costs are in Canadian dollars and revenues are in the greenback. Despite challenges, the Canadian industry remains an economic stalwart, contributing more than $57 billion in GDP, that's 3.4% of the national, in 2014, employing 375,000 people and paying an estimated $71 billion in taxes and royalties to governments over the decade leading through 2012. Canada remains home to the greatest number of publicly listed mining companies in the world. Government has contributed positively in some respects with policy developments and investments supporting the growth of Canada's mining sector. While the government should stay the course on these developments, proactive policy measures are needed to maintain Canadian mining industry's global leadership into the future. Enhance the already strong synergy between mining and Indigenous Canadians. Mining companies have developed progressive relationships with many Indigenous communities. Over the past decade, the Canadian mining industry has increasingly embraced the signing of impact benefit agreements. Beyond employment and training, more recent IBAs promote business opportunities through set-aside contracts and joint ventures. They also provide for environmental monitoring and include direct payment and resource sharing arrangements, among other provisions. Partially as a result of the strength of this growing partnership, and partially due to the nearness of 1,200 Aboriginal communities to 180 mining operations and 2,500 exploration properties, proportionally, the mining industry is the largest private sector employer of Indigenous people in Canada. We commend the new government's commitments to renew Canada's relationship with Aboriginal peoples and support its election platform's commitment to increase funding for Indigenous education and training. Moving forward with a reconciliation agenda, the government should renew and enhance funding for the Skills and Partnership Fund and the Aboriginal Skills and Employment Training Strategy after they expire in March 2016. The government has stated it will review resource development regulatory permitting processes to enhance public confidence. We look forward to working as a constructive partner to government in carrying out this policy directive. The 2012 changes in federal environmental and regulatory legislation did not reduce federal oversight of mining projects, but created transition problems. The resulting uncertainty, delays, and costs fell disproportionately on the mining sector. In all these processes, mining projects account for 70 to 100% of total applications. To avoid such problems, it is critical that any future changes be informed by meaningful consultation and make adequate provision for transition and departmental capacity to manage transition and deliver implementation. Clean technology and innovation. In 2013, Canadian mining and metal companies invested $677 million in research and development, surpassing that of the machinery sector, the pharmaceutical sector, and the wood products and paper sector. In 2013, the industry employed 4,560 people in research and development. This is more than the pharmaceutical and forestry sectors, which both receive extensive financial and policy support from the government. Canadian Mining Innovation Council is a non-profit organization that was created by industry, government, and academia to fundamentally transform the minerals industry through innovation. CMIC created an innovation strategy for industry called Towards Zero Waste Mining. The business case and resultant technology roadmaps identify transformational goals and projects that will lead to significant reductions in mining waste in the next 5 years, including greenhouse gas emissions reduction and clean technology development. The government should allocate $50 million to CMIC as a component of the $200 million campaign commitment to support the development of green technology. Address the costs of operating in remote northern Canada. As Chief Clarence Louis wrote in the National Aboriginal Economic Development Board's recent report, quote, Canada's North is facing a significant infrastructure deficit, one that is a major barrier to improving the quality of life in northern Indigenous communities and acts as the predominant barrier to economic and business development in the region. Bold investment in large, nation-building infrastructure is required alongside increased investment in community-level infrastructure to support northern communities, end quote. The mining industry is ideally situated to generate significant and meaningful employment, business, and other social and economic opportunities for Indigenous and Northern Canadians. Overcoming the infrastructure deficit is key to unlocking these opportunities. As a priority, government should establish a remote and northern fund within the context of the proposed Canada Infrastructure Bank, designed on the highly successful Alaskan Industrial Development and Export Authority. And also consider ways that fiscal policy can level the playing field for companies that operate in remote and northern regions. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you today, and I'll look forward to taking any of your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marshall, and we'll turn to the first round of questions. Given that we've got a fairly tight time frame, we'll cut the 7 to 5 for the first round. Go ahead, Mr. Sabero.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That'll get everybody on.
No.
Go
Thank
ahead,
you, Mr. Chair, and good
Sabero,
morning
the
to
complaint.
everyone. Thank you to all the panelists for your insightful comments. If I can focus in my reduced time on Perry, I don't want to mispronounce your last name. We ran on a platform where we spoke about a patient-centered approach or patient-centric approach for the delivery of home care services and moving the healthcare model to as such. In our platform, we committed $3 billion over 4 years for our improvements in home care delivery and helping out and working with the provinces. And I'm just kind of wondering, I wanted to get your feedback on how those type of investments would improve quality of care for patients, and also work with when working with the pharmacists as well.
Well, it's an important move. I think strategically, healthcare investments have to move from the acute care model that I think our health foundation has been built on into community care. We think pharmacists can play a very important role in that. We have a lot of pharmacists right now that are actually visiting their patients in their homes, looking at issues of medication adherence, doing a full med review to make sure that all the medications that are being taken are appropriate. So we think investments that are shifting out to community care are very important, and whether it's nurses, physicians, or pharmacists, the frontline health professionals all have a very critical role to play in ensuring the success.
Thank you. I think Denise wanted to comment, so please.
Yes, if I may. What is important to remember is that 8 people out of 10 that work in the health sector or studying or have studied in colleges and institutes. People forget that. And so who is better placed than the people that work and study in colleges and institutes to do, again, look at innovative approaches through applied research or social innovations fund in order to help. So we would be pleased to help you to meet the mandate.
Okay, and thank you. Because, there are, I believe, 2 million Canadians receiving some sort of home care help for a variety of reasons. So it's a pressing issue, and with the demographic changes that are occurring, that we're all well aware about. It's going to be coming more, and our government's committed to tackling this and also working with the provinces in making sure we have the appropriate services. Just a quick comment for the Canadian Mining Association. We all know where the commodity cycle is, the transition going on in the Chinese economy. What's your outlook in terms of for commodity prices? You can draw a line, copper, the Canadian dollar, and it almost moves 1-to-1. But I'm just curious more of your outlook on that, because of the limited time, I'll leave it at that question there.
Thank you. Well, if I had a crystal ball, I can tell you I wouldn't be sitting before this committee right now. All seriousness aside here, look, it's a complex situation, and there's no simple answer. Commodities, Canada produces over 60 minerals and metals. We're a top 10 producer of over 10 minerals in the world. Though demand cycles for those materials vary. So you can't say with one fell swoop that the industry is up, the industry is down. I can tell you that some commodities, particularly iron ore and coal, are at very low periods right now. I can tell you that some other commodities, such as gold and zinc, are on an uptick. Whether that has staying power, we'll have to wait and see. But as a general message, to answer your question, I'd say the industry is a cyclical industry. When it's high, nobody looks down, and when it's down, nobody thinks you're going to be on top again. But one thing that stays true is that it will come back. It always has. It always will. So this is a particularly challenging downturn, but based on some of the presentations that I've seen from commodity experts, people think that we are at the trough of it now, and looking forward, some predictions forecast improvements in pricing points as early as 2016.
Ms. Raitt.
Thank you very much. A very quick question for Mr. Eisenschmidt, and then a general question for colleges, institutes, and electrochemistry. By the way, I have a master's in chemistry, so I'm really pleased to see you here today. It almost makes me remember what I left behind. So, Mr. Eisenschmidt, just a very quick question. Does your association have a point of view with respect to a proposal to remove GST from consumer health products, specifically over-the-counter medications? Have you guys talked about that at all?
We've been involved in some of those discussions. I'm not sure we're at a point where we actually have a perspective on that, but we have been engaged with our fellow association on that matter.
When you get to that point, I'd appreciate if you would send me a letter on it, just so I can gather some information on it. Obviously, I've been approached from another association. And I guess for colleges and institutes and the Center for Electrochemistry and Environmental Technology, one of the things that we're doing very well in Canada is that we have attracted our students to go into post-secondary tertiary education. In fact, we're number one in the OECD. You probably know that. And I'm even more proud that 66% of women between the ages of 25 and 34 actually have tertiary education. And I think that's a great thing. So you're doing well in terms of attracting people to colleges and universities. That doesn't seem to be the problem. If we flip it to the other side on innovation, we're really struggling. We're 13 out of 16 peer countries on innovation. And what I've read in the past about it is that it comes down to two things. We're not as strong in entrepreneurship, and we're not as strong on commercialization of our research. So why don't you both, if you don't mind, in the time that we have, give me your perspective on how we deal with that side of our education system, which isn't about attracting people. It's about preparing them for entrepreneurship, encouraging them for entrepreneurship, and then the second piece, the commercialization, which is where we need both of those things firing for innovation to happen.
Applied research in colleges and institutes means automatically helping students with respect to entrepreneurships, developing entrepreneurship skills, as well as helping small and medium enterprise to develop new products or new services for commercializations. Let me give an example. I'll use an example from PEI, if I may, because the chair is from PEI. Very simple example. You all have been to PEI, I'm sure. Blueberry are very popular in PEI. What happened? There was a person that was selling blueberry juice in PEI. Problem? Waste. On an island, waste is a big issue. Knocked on the door of Holland College and said, "Can you help me? I have all that waste. What can I do?" Guess what? This individual now sells 7 products. 1 blueberry juice that has, in fact, less vitamins and minerals than in his 6 other products, and now this person has 7 products. So concrete example of how the funding that the Government of Canada provides to colleges and institutes to help small and medium enterprise. And while they learned about that, as I said, they also learned about entrepreneurship skills. And Nancy has a great example also that I had the chance to hear and visit, and you'll see the difference she is making in the community.
I will answer in French because I'm more fluent in French.
We are working with small and medium-sized businesses. We are trying to reduce risk. We are trying to get economies of scale, and we're trying to get things out onto the marketplace as quickly as is possible. We are working with Bioca International, which is a company. The business wanted to try and get into an American market, and it was with a product for children. So we worked with them to produce a product, and now a large percentage of their product which they sell is sold to the States. So we were for 2 or 3 years working with them to develop their product, which they could then sell to the States, and it's produced in Quebec. There's also a company that make lithium, high quality lithium, and they wanted to have, they wanted to work with us on processing, and we did that, and we suggested to the company that they set up in Shawinigan a centre, and so they agreed. They said they'd open their factory in our town, and then that's created some 300 jobs. And so that's all based from the research that we've done with them. So we work with the universities. We take what they've done, and then we help them scale it up and get it out into the marketplace. And that's why we think it's so important to have these budgets for applied research, to see these budgets go up, because we can give you these concrete examples. 85% of the projects we've done over the past number of years have ended up with getting something out into the marketplace. So we're getting results. We're getting these new we're using new technologies, and we're getting things out into the market. So the money that the government's investing in us, well, we're really seeing the result. We're seeing these concrete results, but obviously you have to know that $1 invested with us, we can get $5 more to have the project, and then that generates economic benefits.
Merci beaucoup. Monsieur Eisenschmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Eisenschmidt. I really enjoyed your presentation. We support a pharmacare program. We want, obviously, to work with the provinces. They would be responsible for management of this program. There'd be different models in the different provinces, obviously. I understood you to say that you don't necessarily favour a public pharmacare program. You'd rather see a mix, a public-private mix. Is that correct? I just wasn't sure on one point that you'd make. Would you like to see an agreement between the provinces and Ottawa to have a pan-Canadian organisation which could perhaps reach agreements to bulk buy the drugs and then for distribution? Is that what you would be interested in?
We're against a universal pharmacare program. All we're saying is, to date, that has been the one model that has dominated the discussion, and some of the economic modeling around that has turned out to be inaccurate. So our most recent study showed that it would actually lead to a transfer of costs from the private sector to the public sector of an additional $6.6 billion. So, and we're not against that. It has its merits. What we're suggesting is, these are Canadians' hard-earned taxpayer money, and we want to make sure that governments invest it wisely. We're about to come out with some research on different models of pharmacare, because pharmacare means different things to different people, and we want to make sure that the government is making an informed decision about the right implementation path moving forward.
Quand on regarde un système d'assurance médicaments pharmacare,
when we look at pharmacare, if you don't think about the single payer who could buy things in bulk and do the negotiations and so forth, whether you include the single-payer model or you exclude them, it will make quite a difference, wouldn't it? Think of New Zealand. That's quite an interesting example. If you have, they have an organisation that negotiates the purchase of the medicines. With Epitor, that is $811 in Canada for Lipitor. In New Zealand, it's significantly cheaper. If you take the generic version of Lipitor in Canada, it's $150. In New Zealand, it's $15. So the cost of generic medicines in Canada is 79% higher than in other countries. We see that we pay more than they do in other OECD countries as well. We're the same for the branded drugs. We pay more for them because in the UK, for example, in the UK, they've got this model where a single organisation can negotiate for the prices. So we want to look at a way that you can reduce the costs by having a central body that could perhaps negotiate bulk buying. That would be one model. Do you agree with these figures that I've suggested to you? And do you think that having this model where you have one person who can do the bulk buying would make a difference, would make a positive outcome?
Description that you gave, and there's a number of different elements that I need to respond to in that. So, first of all, without question, the more volume any purchaser is acquiring of drugs, generally speaking, the lower the price will be. You mentioned the New Zealand model and some of those price comparisons. We have another research study that's coming out in the next few weeks. Some of the problems with the PMPRB studies that do these global comparisons is ex-factory price. It's not the end consumer price. We're commissioning a study that's looking at the actual cost to the payer, whether it's the government or the private sector or the patient, him or herself. And there's great disparities when you look at it from that perspective compared to just the ex-factory price. So that's point number one. Point number two is there are also qualitative issues with when you go to a central sole source supply like New Zealand has done, and we've done a lot of comparisons there. There are some unintended consequences of that. So, for example, we know that to get innovative medicines approved by their purchasing plan, the time frame is about twice as long as it is in many other countries. So people that are relying on critical new medications are seeing undue delays. We see significant less drugs being listed by New Zealand than it is in other countries. So again, there's advantages to single sourcing or at least to volume purchasing, but there are some unintended consequences that people need to consider before they commit to that kind of model. And we are about to release some research to help inform that opinion.
Thank you both. Mr. Graywell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for all of you guys to come in and present to us today. My first question, again, sorry, is to you, Perry. You know, a lot of the testimony we've heard over the last couple of days is people have mentioned a national pharmacare program. My question is a really simple question. What percentage of the population doesn't have drug coverage through their private employer?
All the research I've seen, it's about 10% of the population is not taking essential medications for cost reasons. So about 10% of the population is affected by that.
And what's the cost to, let's say, that it's, you know, hypothetically to cover that 10% to the government?
Again, our research that is coming out will look at a catastrophic coverage model that will look at simply that gap. So we don't have that research yet, but that information will be coming out in the next 4 weeks or so.
Yeah, if you could send that, I think, to the entire committee, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Definitely, we'd love to do that.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for your submission. My next question is to Denise. Thank you so much. I couldn't agree with you more on the importance of post-secondary education. As a recent grad myself, you know, I know what education has done to me in my life, and I'm here because I had an opportunity to receive post-secondary education. A lot of my younger cousins are now not going on to university, but to colleges, and specifically the trades. But they're having a lot of issues getting apprenticeships. And now the federal government has come out with this very ambitious infrastructure project plan, infrastructure investment. What ratio do you think, in your opinion, should be considered for apprenticeship for each project? So a certain percentage of apprenticeship should be involved in each project that the government approves.
My God, which percentage? I think no project should go ahead if they don't have apprenticeship. That would be my easiest answer for you. To establish a ratio would not be fair because different parts of the country have different reality. So you would need to take this into account. Because that's very important. One of the things that we're suggesting is to have an incentive for employer to ensure that they take and encourage the apprentice to finish their year 3 and year 4, because very often they do not have their red seal because they have good pay after year 1 and 2, and unfortunately they leave. So that's part of our submission, to ensure that in fact they will have incentive to continue their study. And then automatically, if you have this extra added benefit of having infrastructure that's required to have apprentice, I think there would be a lot of construction companies that would certainly have an increased incentive to pursue.
I used to be a co-op student way back when at Bell, and I know what co-op did for my resume in getting my first full-time job as an analyst in the finance industry. In your perspective, what can we do to encourage private, big Fortune 500 companies to take on more co-op students outside of the initial, obviously, tax incentives that we provide on hiring students?
Have tax credit, maybe. That would be one way to increase it. Or for each student they have one that is sponsored, if you want, and there's a payment for that. Because unfortunately, a number of you do not have the chance to have internships or co-op, because in some communities there's a lack of those opportunities. So that's why, again, we're asking for some incentive for those companies in order to make sure that it will provide those jobs like the one you had, that in fact help you to have a permanent job later on.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Well, we'll go to Mr. McColman and then Ms. O'Connell for 4 minutes each, and then one quick question from Mr. Leipert and Mr. McKinnon in order to get everybody on. So, Mr. McColman.
Well, okay. Thank you, Chair. Mr. Marshall, I have great empathy for the ups and downs of your industry. I was once in an industry that was either boom or bust, and that was the building industry. So I know the bad times and I know the good times. But that said, how important is accelerated capital cost recovery to some of the companies that are doing mining?
Thanks for the question. The difference between the capital cost allowance and the accelerated capital cost allowance is that you can write off in what would take 14 years currently with an accelerated capital cost allowance. That'll take about 3 years. So if you're looking at development of a project in mining where all of the costs are up front, keep in mind that companies have zero revenue stream relative to investment until they process and bring to market first pound, ounce, or ton of material that they've extract from the ground. That means they're the most over-leveraged from a cost investment standpoint relative to revenue stream at the point of production. So if you look at how quickly it takes a company to recoup and become profitable after that investment, an accelerated capital cost allowance can accelerate and therefore improve project economics for projects moving forward.
And obviously that creates jobs. It produces revenue for the government with the faster recovery of tax dollars once the project comes to fruition.
That's right. Tax and royalty formulas operate based on profitability, and when profits are high, taxes and royalties are higher, when profits are low, taxes and royalties are lower. When there's no profits, there's no royalties. So the quicker a company can move into a profitable point of production, the greater the return would be to government on investment for credits like that.
Thank you. And now my question to Ms. Amiot. Having been involved in the university and secondary education in a deep way as a governor of Wilfrid Laurier University, as well as being involved in building a new university in my community, and the background of apprenticeship, which was brought up by my colleague across the way. This is a provincial jurisdiction, and I wonder through you whether your organization would be willing to advocate to this new government because they are continually talking about how they're somehow building new relationships with the provincial partners in various ways. So I'm just seeing an opportunity here, and I'm asking you the question: would your organization be willing to go to, let's say, the province of Ontario and ask them to reduce the ratio of apprentices to tradespeople to appropriate levels as it has in other provinces? In Ontario right now, this is provincial regulation, many of the trades are 1-to-1. So the question is, why don't people get into apprenticeships? Why is it hard to get the training out on the job site? It's because the province of Ontario requires one tradesperson for one apprentice. Now, many other provinces are 4-to-1, 5-to-1, 6-to-1. Is that something you think would benefit the people who are in the trades and getting solid jobs in futures, and would be something that your organization would be willing to back?
This is certainly something that we would love to examine with the different associations that look after those matters. I know that the Atlantic, for example, have put in place a very interesting initiatives to have better harmonizations of the trades, and they are starting by a certain number of specific trades, and then it means that by a certain date, the 4 provinces of the Atlantic will have the same prerequisites. So what I hope is that the wave will come from the Atlantic and in fact go to the West, so that there would be better harmonization.
Thank you very much, Ms. O'Connell. 4 minutes.
Thank you very much. I had actually to Mr. Eigensmith the same question as Ms. Wright in regards to the GST on over-the-counter. So if your association does take a position, maybe you could share it with the whole committee, as I'm sure many of us have been approached on that. In regards to your submission about immunization, I don't know if I didn't understand it correctly, but I don't know in other provinces other than Ontario, I know pharmacists now can provide flu shots, for example. Is that the case across the country?
Right now in Canada, it's a patchwork of approvals. So the territories in Quebec, in those areas, pharmacists are not allowed to provide immunizations. In certain provinces, for example, BC, they can provide more than just flu immunizations. They can actually provide travel medicine vaccinations. So different regulations. It's a patchwork quilt around the country. And the other thing is reimbursement rates differ as well. So I think Ontario has the lowest reimbursement rates for pharmacies providing flu vaccines, around $7 or $8 per, and I think it's $25 in Alberta at the higher end.
Okay, so that part of your submission was creating more of a national standard in terms of pharmacists and immunizations, or is it something else?
Well, a number of things have to be done on a national immunization strategy. So it's about, for example, putting in place a proper registry, putting in place proper tracking and reporting on effectiveness of immunization programs. So there's a number of important, a consistent schedule of immunizations across the country. So there's a lot of things that the federal government can do to try to harmonize and make that program more consistent around the country.
So it's part of this kind of e-health system. I know that's kind of the Ontario use, but the overall e-tracking of medical records. But with immunizations through pharmacists. I know, for example, I have a more consistent pharmacist than a doctor, especially being in Ottawa. You know, you have to kind of go where you can, but I know my pharmacist is always the same. So is it that kind of access to knowing, you know, the pharmacist knowing your immunization record, that is the kind of standard you're looking towards?
Yeah, no, well, not just the practitioner knowing what your immunization program is, but also nationally tracking it so that we know where there are pockets of poor immunization rates, and you can target programs to boost those rates. And then it also allows you to, again, track the effectiveness of these immunization programs. But it all starts with a core set of data that currently is not being captured in a reliable way.
Perfect. Thank you. That clarifies a lot. And my question is just in regards to colleges and universities. So I don't know if both or either you can answer, but in terms of having our Aboriginal skills and training development program, just wondering if you have any thoughts in terms of how we can improve this program or really enhance the ability to attract Aboriginal First Nations into colleges, universities, and skilled trades.
I will not talk about universities. I do not represent them. It's extremely, extremely important to increase the funding available for post-secondary students that are Indigenous. As you know, that population has increased tremendously in the last 10 years, but unfortunately, there has been a cap of 2% increased funding that clearly does not suffice the demand. And so, for example, what is very important is to renew and expand the Aboriginal Skills and Employment Training Strategy, the assets, because our members, in fact, are training a lot of that clientele that often is their first entry to the job market or to go to universities and often to come back to colleges. Some of you may not know, but 22% of our student clientele in colleges, in fact, have a background from universities. So some people are often saying that we are becoming the finishing school more and more. So, and we're very proud of that.
Well, thank you very much, both. A quick question from Mr. Leibert.
A quick comment, Perry. I just won't want you to leave the table, despite the passionate plea from our ND colleague who sits next to us here, that somehow pharmacare is the panacea to all of what ills of the healthcare system. And so I think there is a lot of work to be done in that area yet, and there are a lot of options that I hope the Pharmacy Association will continue to push. I wanted to ask Denise a quick question. One of the dilemmas I see that in your association is probably as good an example as any, when the federal government starts to decide what kinds of projects to fund, and we've heard a lot in the presentations about shovel-worthy projects. But I know in the case of Alberta, a lot of money has been spent in the last decade because the resources, the resources were there to upgrade facilities in Alberta. And probably there wouldn't be those same situations elsewhere in the country. So the need is probably greater elsewhere in the country. But at the same time, the dilemma the government has is attempting to try and invest infrastructure where people are now out of work. And so how does the government kind of balance the two, need versus what I think would be an objective of the government is to try and put people back to work?
What is very interesting, when commodity prices are low, and there are less jobs in the industry, guess what? People go back to school. They go back to acquire increase skills because they realize while they were working that they could be better and they could aspire to a better career if they would be better skilled. And so what we're seeing right now in Alberta is a big, huge increase. And guess what? there are waiting lists right now for trades. There are waiting lists in the health sector. And so Alberta would still be able to get their fair share, I believe, because there are so many needs in Alberta. If I just look at the needs that our institutes have identified for Alberta, in deferred maintenance, it's for about 200 million and 1.6 billion for Alberta colleges and institutes in infrastructure, in new projects. And I can just give you an example, Red Deer. It's a place that most of the people probably know. Big needs right now for a Center for Health and Wellness and Sport for 90 million. And the difference this building would make for Red Deer would be incredible for the community. I could give you another example for Nathan.
Denise,
I have a full list here, you know.
You've got the whole list across the country, but we're going to have to cut you. We are at a time. I would certainly like to thank the witnesses for their presentations on short notice and the good information and forthrightness of their answers to questions. So thank you. We will suspend for a few minutes to bring up the next witnesses. We have a Skype presentation and a video conference. So we'll suspend for 4 minutes if we could. Come to order for our second series of witnesses on pre-budget consultations. And we have two individuals on either Skype or video conference. But we'll start with you, Miss Forget. Hey. Hey, guys. Where's he at?
He's there. He's the one making all the noise.
He's the one making the noise. All right, we'll come to order, and because we are going to run at a very tight on time. We'll start with Miss Forget, who's a professor at the University of Manitoba. And is it guaranteed annual income? Is that the topic? Go ahead, Ms. Forget. The floor is yours, and we'll have to cut it at 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to come and talk to you all today. I'm an economist. I'm a health economist at the University of Manitoba. And I'm here with a very simple request today. I'm going to ask you to set aside a very small amount of money in this budget exercise going forward so that you can work with the provinces to facilitate a series of guaranteed annual income experiments or pilots across the country. As you may know, there's a surge of interest in guaranteed annual income from around the world. Finland and several cities in the Netherlands have just initiated pilots. Switzerland's about to vote on a citizens' referendum later this year. In low and moderate income countries, experiments are flourishing. In Canada, a number of organizations, including the Public Health Agencies of Canada and Ontario, the National Association of Food Banks, the Canadian Medical Association, the Canadian Association of Social Workers, along with many others, have endorsed the idea of a guaranteed annual income. Mayors and councils of several large cities, including Calgary and Edmonton, have endorsed the idea, as have some provincial governments. In Canada, when we talk about a guaranteed annual income, we usually present it as a refundable tax credit based on income, similar to the National Child Benefit or the OAS-GIS. So in a sense, what we're asking for is to see what happens if you extend the ideas behind the National Child Benefit to working age benefits or adult benefits. Both of these, by the way, are forms of GAI, the OAS-GIS and the National Child Benefit. As family income increases, the guaranteed annual income would decline, but less than proportionately. This, of course, creates a work incentive, but it also establishes a minimum level of income for all Canadians. The proposed guaranteed annual income would stand in place of the current arrangements for adult or working age benefits in this country, and as such, it would form a coherent part of a progressive state. Interestingly enough, some of the best evidence for how a guaranteed annual income would function in a high-income country comes from this country, comes from Canada. In the mid-1970s, the federal government, in partnership with the province of Manitoba, established a project called Mincome, which ran for 4 years in the city of Winnipeg and the town of Dauphin, Manitoba, which had a population of about 10,000 people. The project ended without a final evaluation after the provincial government changed, but I and others have been able to go back and to find out what happened. What happened to the participants in the experiment? What were the consequences? It turned out that many people at the time were worried about a reduction in employment. If you give people a guaranteed income, why wouldn't everybody stop working? There was a small reduction in terms of the number of hours worked, primarily because women used the guaranteed annual income to buy themselves longer maternity leaves at a time when the state guaranteed 4 or 6 weeks, and partly because boys, young adolescents, took their first full-time job at 18 instead of 16. One of the major findings of my project was that Mincome was associated with an increase in the high school completion rate, particularly for young boys. I looked at the health data, found that hospitalizations fell by 8.5% relative to a matched control group, largely because of improved mental health, as did visits to family doctors. The likely benefits of a guaranteed annual income are many. We can look at improved physical and mental health, improved quality of life for low-income people, including the working poor. Current adult benefits do a very poor job of dealing with the working poor. A system of social benefits better attuned to the economic changes that we've seen over the past 30 or 40 years associated with the rise of precarious employment and the rise of inequality. Increased education and job training, which leads to greater productivity, and less use of other social services. Reduced use of allied public services that are worsened by poverty, such as health care, special education, criminal justice. I actually work at a downtown hospital at the University of Manitoba, and as you walk through the hallways, it's very easy to see that what we treat in that hospital is very largely the consequences of poverty as opposed to bad luck. We'd also see a more efficient delivery of social services, less intrusive social services, and a reduction in stigma associated with income support, all of which are associated with better family functioning and better child development outcomes. Now, Mincome took place 35 years ago, and a wise government might want to update its findings. This is a pretty big change in the way we deliver social benefits in this country. But any government committed to developing an evidence-informed public policy could do much worse than to support the many calls and initiatives that have come from provincial and local governments across the country, from professional organizations across the country, and from the public at large. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you, by chance, have copies of that evaluation that you could provide the clerk?
I can provide it for you.
If you could provide it to the clerk, and she will give it to committee members. Going to the Business Council of Canada, Mr. Kingston, please.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, committee members, thank you for the invitation to take part in your pre-budget consultations. The Business Council of Canada represents the chief executives and entrepreneurs of 150 leading Canadian companies in all sectors of the economy. Our member companies employ 1.4 million citizens, account for more than half the value of the TSX, contribute the largest share of federal corporate taxes, and are responsible for most of Canada's exports, corporate philanthropy, and private sector investments in R&D. The Canadian economy is undergoing a complex transition. Low commodity prices are complicating the economic outlook, while a weakened Canadian dollar is rebuilding capacity in the non-resource sector. At the same time, the global economic environment is weighing on Canada's prospects. The IMF has downgraded its 2016 forecast, and just as I came here this morning, the OECD has also downgraded their global outlook. This uncertain economic environment is putting pressure on government revenues, even as demands to increase spending become more persistent. The government's recent economic and fiscal outlook has confirmed that the fiscal situation has deteriorated since the last federal budget. But while growth is weak, it is important to note that Canada as a whole is not in recession. The real economy is actually growing, albeit modestly. There is evidence that Canada's economy is pivoting and becoming more diversified, and there are positive signs that our export economy is benefiting from the recent fall in the value of the Canadian dollar, as well as from rising U.S. demand. Any proposed fiscal intervention must be appropriate to these circumstances and targeted towards the areas of our economy where help is needed most. At the same time, we believe it is important that the government follow through with its commitment to balance the budget by the fourth year of its mandate, while pursuing the goal of a 25% debt-to-GDP ratio by 2021. Fiscal discipline matters. When governments commit themselves to an explicit debt-to-GDP ratio, it provides a frame of reference against which to judge the numerous demands for increased spending. A low debt-to-GDP ratio also serves as an insurance policy against future downturns. Given the fragile state of the global economy, the government should strive to ensure that it has the fiscal capacity to respond to another sharp downturn. Equally important, we encourage all members of Parliament to recognize that our country's future prosperity depends ultimately on our ability to compete for jobs, investment, and talent in a rapidly changing global economy. So in the time remaining, I will highlight a few measures the government can take now to strengthen our competitiveness. First, invest in infrastructure. Canadian exporters must be able to deliver their products efficiently to global markets. Modern, efficient, and world-class infrastructure enables this. Productivity-enhancing infrastructure projects that have a direct and measurable impact on the Canadian economy will provide the greatest return in future economic activity and jobs. While we recognize and respect the need for robust regulatory and approval processes when reviewing proposed projects, we urge the government to ensure that such reviews are adequately funded and capable of being completed in a timely fashion. Secondly, reform Canada's tax system. When Canadians and their political leaders debate potential changes to the tax code, the discussions generally focus on the rates paid by different individuals and businesses and the various tax exemptions and credits that are eligible. We believe the time has come for a comprehensive review of Canada's tax system, one that answers a very simple question. If we were designing a tax system today from scratch with the goal of maximizing long-term growth, what would it look like? Our current tax system is essentially a product of the last century. Today, we are one of the most open economies in the world, highly dependent on trade, open to foreign investment, and welcome to immigration. So we need a tax system for the 21st century and one that ensures Canada's continued success in the global economy. Third, boost innovation. We welcome the government's commitment to invest in incubators, accelerators, and research facilities. But to make the most of these investments, the government should set clear funding objectives with a premium placed on strengthening competitive advantages and regional strengths and encouraging collaboration and new models of engagement. As part of the government's innovation strategy, we recommend revisiting the review of federal support to research and development. It was chaired by Tom Jenkins. There are a number of very good recommendations in there that are worth considering, including making business innovation a key element of federal procurement. I'll just note, when crafting new innovation strategies, it is important that they are designed in such a way that ensures they do not have unintended consequences. And lastly, develop a coordinated approach to addressing climate change. Canada's business leaders are ready and willing to work with the federal and provincial governments to ensure that our country makes a responsible contribution to global efforts to reduce greenhouse gases. An effective and credible national plan must involve enhanced efforts from all segments of Canadian society, and it must be drafted in partnership with the provinces and territories. With that, I conclude my remarks, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kingston. Turning then to Halifax, Nova Scotia, to Ms. Baldwin, who's with the Public Service Alliance of Canada. Welcome, Ms. Baldwin.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before the committee. The Public Service Alliance of Canada represents 180,000 members. Most of them are employed with the Federal Public Service and its agencies. The previous Conservative government cut billions of dollars a year from public services. Our members know how these cuts have affected services. In a moment, I will talk about how some of these have affected the Atlantic region and the country. During the last election, the Liberal Party campaigned on an anti-austerity theme that Canadians clearly supported. We encourage the government to follow this approach. This is not the time to further weaken the economy by subjecting the federal public sector to further austerity measures. As a large employer and a key provider of social infrastructure, the government should lead by example by investing in public services and the workers who provide them. The Liberal election platform promise to improve the quality of public services, including reducing wait times and increasing access to in-person service. The only way this can be achieved is by reinvesting in the federal public service to ensure that staffing levels meets Canadian needs. Don't be distracted by claims of greater efficiencies and better service by simply improving technology. Inspecting food or aircraft, processing EI and pension claims, helping small businesses understand their tax obligations, protecting our fish stocks, or maintaining our national parks, to name just a few services, these require people. We are pleased that the government is following through on the commitment to reopen the Veterans Affairs offices that have been closed, several of them in the Atlantic Canada. But this is just a start to repairing the damage. Parks Canada Highland Links was privatized. This is a historic site. Residents of the community were expropriated from their lands in order for this park to be created. In return, they were promised good-paying jobs. Parks Canada issued an RFP and placed Highland Links, a world-famous golf course, into private hands. Privatization of the park will end up costing taxpayers millions of dollars more than if the facilities have remained in public hands. 3 years ago, the Conservative government closed a number of search and rescue stations in spite of the warnings from communities on both coasts. Again, we acknowledge the government's commitment to reopen the Kitsilano Coast Guard Station on the West Coast and St. John's Marine Rescue Subcenter in Newfoundland. The big question is whether there will be the necessary staff to ensure proper coverage. We believe our union should be among the stakeholders who provide the advice of how these facilities can be best respond to the community's needs, as our members are among the experts who deliver the service. As a last example, I have to mention the workers who provide benefits such as employment insurance, Canada Pension Plan, and old age security. These workers provide a lifeline to the most vulnerable Canadians. Wait times for Canadians to access their hard-earned benefits are simply too long. The government must reinvest in service delivery and ensure that there are enough people employed to deliver these important benefits in a timely manner. Our federal services cannot be allowed to deteriorate any further. We believe this government can and must consider progressive taxation measures to increase revenue that will allow it to invest in public services and programs that stimulate economic growth. Programs such as National Child Care System and the expansion of the Canada Pension Plan. Corporation tax levels must be examined. Cuts to corporate taxes have not resulted in private sector reinvestment, but have helped to starve the public treasury. It's public knowledge that there is considerable lost revenue in offshore tax havens alone, yet the Canadian Revenue Agency has cut auditor positions, the very people needed to help ensure everyone pays their fair share. Our members expect to see tangible evidence in this upcoming budget of this government's commitment to restore federal public services. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Baldwin, for sticking right on time. Turning then to the Sheldon Kennedy Child Advocacy Group, Ms. Johnson. Can we find her on there?
Yeah, she should be popping up.
There you go. Can you hear us, Ms. Johnson?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay,
Thank you.
we can hear you as well. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to present to the Standing Committee on Finance. We're very honored to be part of the discussion today. My name is Bonnie Johnston. I'm the CEO of the Sheldon Kennedy Child Advocacy Centre in Calgary. In my short time today, I would like to focus on three areas: the social and economic impact of child abuse across this country, the emerging successes of the Sheldon Kennedy Child Advocacy Centre's integrated model of practice, and the opportunity provided by the centre and our partners partners to engage with federal assistance in a groundbreaking research study that has the potential to transform our understanding of the impact of child sexual abuse and identify and develop high-impact interventions and treatments with local, national, and global implications. The impact of child abuse is profound. Children who have been abused are 30% less likely to graduate from high school, 4 times more likely to be arrested as a juvenile, 26 times more likely to experience homelessness, and 4 times as likely to report self-harm or suicidal ideation. Child abuse costs Alberta $2.4 billion every year and an estimated $21.5 billion annually within Canada. We now know through research that child abuse is a form of trauma and that prolonged trauma or toxic stress can impact the developing brain. If we do not deal with the impact of early childhood trauma, our country will continue to deal with the resulting outcomes of increased poverty, homelessness, mental health, and hopelessness. Or, as Sheldon Kennedy would say, the outer layer of the onion, which is not sustainable over time. The need to do better for our children and think differently led to the development of the Sheldon Kennedy Child Advocacy Centre. The centre is a not-for-profit organization working in partnership with 6 government organizations. Our practice is integrated, wrapping around the child and family. We serve all sexual abuse cases in the region and the most severe and complex cases of physical abuse and neglect. We assess 124 new cases per month, and over 34 months have assessed over 4,000 infants, children, and youth who have been impacted by severe child abuse. As a result of our model of integrated practice, the following outcomes are being achieved. An estimated annual value of over $500,000 in productivity improvements was achieved in just one of our working teams at the centre. Prevention and intervention for vulnerable pregnant women has decreased child protection involvement from 31% to 17%. Physical and sexual abuse exam time has been reduced by up to 50%, and therapy wait times were reduced from 8 months to 1.5 months, and a child only tells their story once. Our leading practice and strong partnerships have positioned the centre to support research that will help us better understand and continually improve services for child abuse survivors, their families, and communities. Research allows us to connect the dots and understand the true impact of child abuse in our society. The proposed research partners the centre with the Cummings School of Medicine of the University of Calgary, the Hotchkiss Brain Institute, and the Willamette University College of Law to establish a multidisciplinary longitudinal study of sex abuse survivors. Participants will be evaluated clinically and from a neurobiological perspective over a 15-year period. This study would be the most comprehensive study of sex abuse survivors conducted with global relevance. Financial support to conduct the study is needed. We respectfully ask the federal government to consider supporting this research. It is estimated that over 15 years, the projected cost would be $23 million or $1.5 million per year. By taking action now and supporting this research, the federal government can position Canada as a global leader and, most importantly, accelerate our efforts to end child abuse and support the full recovery and reintegration of survivors into their communities as productive and engaged citizens. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Johnson. And I think I neglected to indicate that you were coming from, been streamed in from Calgary, Alberta. Is that correct? Okay, turning to questions, and we'll have to do as we did last time. First round will have to be 5 minutes, starting with Mr. Ouellette.
Thank you very much, Chair. I really appreciate the, all the guests coming today. Thank you very much for all your the information you've brought. I'd like to go back to the guaranteed income. Now, this is an idea that's been around for a century, at least. It's been promoted by conservatives, socialists, neoliberals, liberals, even social creditists. Even the Premier of Alberta, William Aberhart, talked about this. I've even heard Hugh Segal was in favor of this at one point, and apparently a poll in 2013 in November actually found that 46% of Canadians were in favor of this, and 42% were opposed. But, it's an idea. Perhaps its time has come to be studied a little bit greater. Now, in the 2015 election, I was in the working class neighborhood of the Weston in Winnipeg Centre, which is technically a really conservative area, and I came across a retired lady, and incredibly enough, she started telling me, usually she votes conservative, but she was telling me about MnCOM and the impact it had on her life. And she was a young mother, no education, from Dauphin, where this one of the sites was. And today, she used that income to get an education. And she didn't become super rich. She's still working class. But one of her sons, she has 3 sons. They all have families. One is an engineer with a master's degree. One works for the city, has a master's in urban planning. The third one has his own business and is very successful, and they all support their families, all great citizens, and, I guess at the end of the day, provide income to the state through their taxes. And, I was just wondering, what would have happened if this experiment had continued on for a longer period of time?
That's a really interesting question, because certainly among the researchers, when this project was introduced in 1974, there was a belief that MnCOM was a pilot project that would be rolled out across the country by the end of the decade. So this was seen as very much like Medicare, and a lot of the conversation I'm hearing now about guaranteed annual income is very much like the old conversation about Medicare. It's something whose time has come. We need to think about it a little bit. In terms of how this impacted people's lives, I've got all kinds of anecdotes. When we interviewed people, we went and talked to participants in the study, and 2 of my favorites. One involved a small business. Actually, it was a family farm, and they relied on a truck to take their material to the farmers market and sell their vegetables. When MnCOM came along, it actually supported small business people as well. It was available to everybody in the community. It depended solely on the amount of income coming into the community. When the truck broke down, they were out of business. MnCOM didn't have the kind of asset tests that provincial welfare had at the time, and so they were able to use that money to invest in an asset that allowed them to get back on their feet. My other story involves a librarian, and very much like yours. She was a single mother with 2 daughters, and she was on mother's allowance, on provincial social assistance when MnCOM came along. And she'd always been treated very respectfully by the welfare system, but she was frustrated because she wanted to undertake job training, and her caseworker kept saying, well, you go home and take care of your kids, and we'll take care of you. When MnCOM came along, she transferred to the program, engaged in some job training, got a part-time job that turned into a full-time job. And when I talked to her, she just retired after a 25-year career as a librarian, and was incredibly proud of having modeled a different kind of a life for her daughters. So we had graduation pictures on the walls, and the daughters had both become quite independent on their own.
Thank you, Robert. We have about a minute for a question and an answer. Go ahead.
So, one of the things is people often think people are going to stop working. But in fact, the way the MnCOM was set up is for every time you earned $1, you would see a reduction in 50% of the income received from the state. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. And so, I guess at the end of the day, if you're on social assistance, you wouldn't see a benefit, but it would actually might give you a more incentive to actually go out and start working.
That was the intention. And among primary earners, there was very little reduction in terms of the number of hours worked. The reductions were among teenagers and women who reduced the number of hours they worked in a very specific way associated with childbirth.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Raitt.
Thank you very much. While you have the microphone, Professor, on the guaranteed annual, and my colleague is right, Hugh Segal, Senator, is a big proponent of guaranteed annual income. But from the other side of the ledger, could you say that In the study, in the pilot projects, would there be room in there for us to analyze the effect on simplification of processes within the bureaucratic system? Is that something that could also be looked at?
That's not, it would certainly be possible with the new pilot. It wouldn't be possible given the information that was collected.
Agreed, but the new pilot going forward, if you were to be successful, we'd be
that's-
able to take a look at efficiencies in the market as well.
Absolutely,
too.
and that's a
Okay.
big potential benefit, I
Great.
think.
Well, you know, I've always supported studying the issue, so I hope that they're listening on the other side, and I hope you get somewhere with it. For Mr. Kingston, Business Council of Canada, Globe and Mail is reporting today that the government is considering raising the excise tax on gasoline and on diesel. You talked a little bit about taxes. What's your point of view on moving in that direction?
Specifically on, thank you for the question, specifically on raising the excise tax on gasoline, we don't have a view on that right yet. But what I will say is this, related to my comments around tax reform, we've surveyed our members. We survey them every year to see the number of taxes that they pay. And on average, a large Canadian company is taxed at 56 different points. This is looking at municipal, provincial, and federal. And so they're spending about $4 million in employing 20 full-time employees just to comply with these taxes. So the point I would make is we need to look at all of the various taxes that companies are exposed to and find a way to streamline them, because this is extremely costly and it's inefficient for the economy.
Very good, thank you. And Ms. Baldwin out in Halifax, I know that you mentioned about the privatization, but I just want to be clear. What we're talking about is a 42-year lease to manage a golf course in the Cape Breton Highlands Park. You're not suggesting that the government previous actually privatized Cape Breton Highlands National Park, because we both know that's not true.
You can call it contracting out or a 42-year lease, but it was privatized, and it was a private company that got that, and the workers were not protected. So yes, your government did privatize the Highland Links.
No, and that's a golf
course. That land was taken away, expropriated from the community, and was guaranteed good paying jobs, which has not happened.
So, through you, Mr. Chair, I just want to be very clear so that the viewing public understands what you're saying. You are saying that the golf course and spa are going to be operated by a private company from Ontario. That is the fact. We have not seen a privatization of a national park, which is what you're alluding to in your presentation. Can we be very clear on that?
Ms. Baldwin?
It was the golf course that was privatized.
That's right. And I hope the record reflects that, because it's a very different prospect than a national park. And as you probably are aware, I am from Cape Breton, and I know the area quite well, too. I also had a question with respect to deficits. Given that you do take the point of view that taxes on taxpayers should be raised in order to pay for services, do you have a point of view on how big the deficit is, how big the deficit that the minister should run in this budget, and is there any level that you think is too much in terms of an overall deficit?
I believe that Canadians and voters did make a clear, commitment, because they elected the Liberal government knowing that they will come out with a deficit. But the message is that they want to make sure that Canadians are provided with programs and services that they deserve.
Right, but the Liberals promised a $10 billion deficit. That's what Canadians voted for. Wouldn't you agree?
I'm not quite sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Caron.
Merci beaucoup. Je vais commencer avec...
Thank you very much. I'll start with Madame Forger. I'm not sure if you speak French, but you've certainly got a French-sounding name. I myself am an economist. This idea of a GAI, testing the English channel. You're hearing me now? Excellent. The idea, I'm an economist myself, I'm a progressive person. This idea of a GAI has always appealed to me. I've followed the Dauphin model that you talked about, and I think it would be good to have a study as well. But you've got to be careful, because if you just have a small study in a municipality like Dauphin, you won't necessarily see all the factors, because if it was done at a federal level, you'd perhaps see a broader perspective. Different people will have different ideas of what's meant by a GAI as well, or what it ought to be. Some people think it ought to be a tax credit that's available to everybody. Other people have different ideas about it. Perhaps it ought to be a cheque that's sent out to everybody, and then after that, as you work, some of it would have to be paid back through the taxation system. The difficulty in a broad pan-Canadian system is that to have a GEI that's meaningful, you'd have to get rid of the other social safety models such as social assistance, unemployment benefits and so forth. There's a number of different programs. First of all, when we're talking about this GEI, what sort of level would you be talking about? Are you talking about each home, each ought to have, say, $10,000, $5,000, be what it may? What level would you think about? And how would we go about funding it if we were going to have it on this broad pan-Canadian level?
Yeah, absolutely. A number of people, there are a lot of different models of a GEI out there. Most people who are seriously talking about this in Canada right now are talking about a negative income tax model or a refundable tax credit. In terms of what other aspects, I mean, that's where the debate lies. Which other programs get eliminated in order to introduce a guaranteed annual income? I've done some costing exercises looking specifically at replacing adult benefits. So we're talking about provincial welfare systems, INAC support on reserve, and looking specifically at that, keeping in place everything else except for a few minor little tax credits. So keeping in place CPP, EI, and so on. What level? Obviously, the more generous it is, hopefully the better the outcomes, but also the more expensive it gets. And so one reasonable thing to do is to say, well, suppose we decide that no adult should live on less than they would get if they qualified for OAS, GIS. So we're talking about $18,000 per individual, more or less, $25,000 for a family of two. If you cost that out with that kind of a model, you come up with a total pan-Canadian cost of about $30 billion net, having reduced the provincial social assistance, eliminated the social assistance. So it's a net cost of about $30 billion, which is about 10% of total federal government expenditure, and a good deal less than we're currently spending on benefits for the elderly.
Juste rapidement, parce que j'aimerais poser une autre question.
Very briefly, what you're saying then is that the programs and the social advantages will be affected are provincial ones. You're not necessarily talking about changes to federal programs. Should this then therefore be an initiative that's handed over to the provinces? I know the NDP had done some work on this in Manitoba. Since the federal programs aren't going to be included, should it therefore be the provinces? Because we're talking here about changes to provincial programs.
On a provincial basis is that there's a big difference between provinces in this country. So if you're talking about Ontario and Quebec, you can possibly talk about this provincially. If you're talking about PEI in Manitoba, this story changes a little bit.
Merci.
And you're quite right.
Rapidement.
I'm not going to let me talk. Okay.
Non, rapidement, parce que j'ai...
Briefly, just because I've only a certain amount of time and I've got a question for Madame Baldwin as well, but perhaps we could talk about this another time, if that's okay with you. Madame Baldwin, we know that there have been a number of cuts in the safety stations, the research and rescue stations. A lot of comments have been made by Liberal members at the time, and Liberal candidates who are now members, who said that the response time for the Coast Guard search and rescue, that they said the maximum time to respond ought to be 30 minutes if you get a call for assistance. And do we know what the response time is now that these centres have been closed, or these search and rescue stations have been closed? Ms. Baldwin, could you give us a brief answer to that question?
I don't have that information, but I will have that information for you.
Okay, you can send it to the clerk. Thank you. Turning to Mr. McKinnon. 5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. D'abord, je vous...
Thank you very much. Firstly, I would like to thank Professor Forger for being here with us today. I think you really helped us understand this issue. We understand it a lot better when we're talking about the GEI. I also have a question for Ms. Baldwin. As you know, and as my colleagues know, I represent a number of federal public servants here in the National Capital Region, and they have often spoken to me about sick benefits, sick leave. As you know, the previous government had a massive omnibus bill, and there was legislation on this about short-term disability benefits, and now we are putting forward Bill C4, which will repeal the changes that were introduced by the previous government. And so, seeing we're putting things out in the record here today, as my colleague Ms. Raiz was saying, perhaps, Ms. Baldwin, you could tell us about the union's position on the question of these sick benefits and disability benefits.
Thank you very much for the question. As you know, that the sick leave benefits are there for a reason. It's like an insurance program. It's like car insurance. You use the sick benefits when you get sick. There's no federal government worker that raises their hand that wants to be sick. This sick benefits is there to protect their family and is also to protect them, to care for their family when they go off sick. This sick leave is not paid out when an employee retires. It stays on the books. I hope that answers your question.
Merci, Madame Baldwin.
Thank you very much, Ms. Baldwin. That does indeed answer my question.
You talked about infrastructure, and infrastructure has certainly been a running theme on the discussions of this committee. Am I fairly characterizing your organization's position to say that you are in favor of what we would call stimulus spending on infrastructure?
We're absolutely in favor of infrastructure spending. We would just caution, though, that it is in accordance with the economic situation. So if we are into a recession period, then stimulus is required, of course, but it should be at the level that's appropriate as dictated by the economy.
One of the things we've been discussing is alternative financing or infrastructure banks, more increased involvement by pension funds, other pools of capital in development of infrastructure. Your perspective on that?
Yes, definitely. Something that we support actually is there's a great report by Jack Mintz and Phil Basil on establishing agencies that will actually look at infrastructure needs and find a way to prioritize infrastructure spending. And also looking at things like, as you mentioned, public-private partnerships and different financing models. So I think there's a huge need for that to make sure that we actually put money into the projects that are most productivity enhancing and will enable trade, frankly.
I'm sure I would be remiss if I didn't, I think, perhaps characterize Ms. Baldwin's view as a public-private partnership need not mean that we don't have public sector workers working on the particular project, though.
No, of course not.
You're obviously open to that. Yeah. So in terms of shovel-ready versus shovel-worthy, again, a running theme of this committee. In terms of your membership, the kinds of infrastructure that you favor, is it transit? Is it in the innovation category and social infrastructure category?
We would favor a couple of things. Well, first, trade enabling infrastructure is key, so ports, rail, roads, so transportation. So, for example, Port Metro Vancouver is looking to expand the Roberts Bank terminal. That's a good example. That will help shipping flows to the Pacific, so very, very important. And then, of course, energy infrastructure is also extremely important. So those would be two areas that we would prioritize right now.
Excellent. I yield the rest of my time.
Quick time for a quick one.
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Turning then to Mr. McColman, and then we'll come back to Mr. Sabero and close off. Mr. McColman.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Kingston, my colleague just spoke about infrastructure spending, but infrastructure spending, if it's to be effective, do you see it being effective in the short term from where we sit today? And do you think it's possible to get projects out the door fast and to be able to make an impact. I know it's just to mitigate a slow-moving, growing economy, but at a lower level. What's your views on that?
Thank you. We do not think that infrastructure spending right now, it's the lag time is too long to counteract the current downturn. Most studies show that you need about 12 months for infrastructure spending to actually have an impact on the real economy. Obviously, this is debatable, but the multiplier effect can take some time. So spending right now won't help the economy at this moment. There are long-term infrastructure needs, hence the reason we support investment there, but I wouldn't categorize infrastructure spending now necessarily as stimulus to help our current economic issues.
Okay, so in other words, I guess I relate it to some of the needier parts of the country like Alberta, Newfoundland, and New Brunswick, and those types of communities where they need immediate help, but infrastructure isn't going to do the job. Fair analogy?
A fair analogy, unless there are projects that are truly shovel-ready. We use that term a lot, but I think there are very few that are truly in that position.
Since you represent the business community, I know one of the things that's been discussed at this committee and amongst other data that we're aware of is that a lot of corporate wealth is sitting on the balance sheets of corporations, and often in corporate decision-making, uncertainties are some of the reasons why people sit and put it on the balance sheet, because they're not certain. They're not certain about the future of, let's say, taxation. Carbon taxes would be one. Just to cite an example, environmental impact assessments, if they're going ahead with a project that would require something like that. How do you see this affecting investment decisions, this kind of thinking within the corporate world?
Thank you. You're exactly right. Certainty is what absolutely drives major business investment decisions. When we look at the current downturn in business investment in Canada, a lot of that is stemming from the oil and gas sector, and it's obvious why that's the case, right? When the price of oil has declined and there seems to be no level at which it's going to stabilize, that will hold back major large-scale investments. So a clear economic environment and certainty around regulations, taxation, that's what helps businesses make those long-term investment decisions.
Okay, and I'd like to move to Ms. Baldwin. I want to go to that sick leave day conversation you had with my colleague. I had the experience and learning curve of being on a governance body of municipal employees in my past, and one of the challenges we had was the accumulation of these sick days and people literally taking a significant amount of time before they retired to use up those 6 days before they went to retirement. And it was a systemic issue within the organization. Just a quick question. What are the statistics as far as the public service goes in terms of their days absent from work versus say the larger private sector in terms of how did the statistics, are they the same? Do we say the same usage within the public service as we do for those who have these same programs in the private sector?
Yes, thank you for the question. It's the same.
Thank you. That's it.
Okay, we'll save a little time. Mr. Sabero.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Over to Mr. Kingston. Our platform advocated an infrastructure investment over 10 years, going from $65 billion to $125 billion over 10 years. What we've advocated for is long-term sustainable funding in social infrastructure, green infrastructure. I do agree with you. We need to have infrastructure that allows goods and services to move to markets. Ports, you can look at the gridlock that happens in the GTA every day and what the estimated cost is there. I do think there's an argument for infrastructure to flow now. We just saw the OECD downgrade the economic outlook for the entire world, not just Canada. We're part of the world, and we're an open economy. So I do think that needs to be stated. It needs to be now, but it also needs to be flow through for the few years. But I was interested in your comments on a review of the tax system. If you can expand on that front, and also, would you not agree that, just going back to infrastructure, that it is an enabler for long-term economic growth?
Definitely. Thank you. Just to comment on your last comment there, it absolutely is an enabler of long-term economic growth for sure, and hence the reason we support infrastructure spending. Regarding tax, basically what we found is that in the past 10 budgets, and going back even further than that, almost every government has introduced some sort of tax expenditure in one form or another. So this has made the tax system very, very complicated. And for large corporations, and this isn't just for large corporations, it's made it complicated for everybody. But I see it through the lens of a large company. And when they're dealing with this number of taxing points, as I mentioned earlier, 56 different taxing points, it just gets extremely expensive and complicated to comply with Canadian tax legislation. So we're calling for a comprehensive review, look at the whole system. We are in a new global economic environment right now. Our economy has changed from the economy that our tax system was based on previously. So if we could take from scratch a view at our tax system and design one that we think will help the Canadian economy into the future, I think we should really embrace that and see.
Just quickly, quick comment, because I do want to talk to the professor. The Business Council's view on the TFW program. We've had a lot of feedback on that program. I'm hearing it in my riding. It seems not to be working as it was designed. So quick comment there, and then to Ms. Forget, this guaranteed income, if there's some studies you can send us, I'm an economist by training, I really want to look at that, really read that, and you know, we believe in evidence-based policy making, so I would like to get more information on that.
Would be temporary foreign workers.
Temporary foreign workers, yes.
Sorry, just for clarification, what element of the program are you?
Well, what your general view of the program?
General, I'm not the best positioned person to speak on the temporary foreign working program. What I can say though is that we continually hear the need for Canadian businesses to attract the best talent in the world, and our immigration system needs to be designed to allow that to happen. So, programs.
Ms. Forget, did you have anything to add in terms of?
If you can, yes.
Okay, then turning to, before I do, we got a minute on the stimulus spending through infrastructure. You left the impression that it really wouldn't create that stimulus to a little more long term. But what it would do with the massive layoffs in some of the energy sector and others that have skilled workers, it would at least fill a gap in employment, would it not, in terms of some of those infrastructure projects?
It all depends on the speed with which the money can be flowed.
Okay, turning to Mr. Leipert.
Mr. Chairman, I'll be very brief. I just wanted to let Ms. Johnson know in my home city of Calgary that because no one has any questions, I do think, however, I can speak for this entire group around the table about the great work that the Sheldon Kennedy Centre does do in Calgary. So I don't want you to take the lack of any questions as any kind of an indication that that you've been ignored. So one very quick question to Mr. Kingston. There was a headline in the Globe this morning that said investors fleeing the Canadian market at a record pace, and this is kind of a follow-up to Phil's question. And if you were to take oil and gas and just take it out of the equation, what would that headline read?
Thank you. It's a great question. If you took oil and gas out of the equation, the Canadian economy is actually growing. We truly have a two-speed.
There's a difference between growing and investing, though.
Right. Yes, there is. But you would see investment. We see investment from our members in all kinds of sectors, including manufacturing, who are benefiting from the low Canadian dollar relative to the U.S. and surging U.S. demand. So if you took the oil and gas sector out, there are many examples of investment in the Canadian economy right now.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I'll have to thank the witnesses for their presentation, those in Calgary and Halifax, as well as Mr. Kingston, Ms. Forget here. Thank you very much for your presentations, some of them on quite short notice. And we will adjourn and reconvene at 3:30. Meeting adjourned.